If you want financial freedom, time freedom, and want to leave a legacy for generations to come, you probably have heard real estate investing is the place to do that. How do you get started? What do you have to do? When's the right time? If you are looking for those answers, you've come to the right place. My name is Kyle Stanley, and this is Fearless Flipping. My mission is to help you learn this business and conquer real estate investing. Heyo, welcome to the Fearless Flipping Podcast. I'm Kyle Stanley. Before we get started today, make sure that you are liking, commenting, reviewing. As usual, if you have found that this podcast has helped you in some way or another, has helped you to advance in your business, to kick off your business, we would love that if you are on the podcast or YouTube channel, on YouTube, leaving a comment, on the podcast, leaving a review, and being very specific about what it is that you've learned from someone or something on this podcast that has helped you to advance or start in your business. And if you share that on either the YouTube channel or the podcast, we are going to mention you in the next show and give you a shout out. So that is the thing that you get to have from that. So we would love to be able to mention, we'd love to be able to hear from you. I want to know how exactly this podcast and the advice that you're hearing from the experts and from myself is helping you. That's what this is all about. So today, what we have is a really special guest with Tashiona King Stout. Now, what I'm always trying to do is make the show notes easy for you. That's obviously a long and it can be easily misspelled name. So what we're going to do is make it super easy. fearlessflipping.com/king. That's King. But you're going to hear a story of inspiration from a young woman who's still very young in her career, young in age, and has a young family as well. But she has a ton of experience in real estate. She started when she was 19. She's now in her mid-30s. She started off by doing this for herself, but now she's doing it for a higher purpose for her kids. She's been in every aspect of real estate that you can think of, so you're going to learn a lot from her. Let's go ahead and take it away with Tashiona King Stout. Welcome into Fearless Flipping with Tashiona King Stout, all the way from Memphis, Tennessee. She doesn't have the accent, but she's got the Tennessee flair. I'm excited to have you on the show, Tashiona.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Now, guys, even though she does not look it, she is in her mid-30s and been doing real estate since she was a teenager. So I know, Tashiona, that you probably have a ton of stories, a ton of experience, but not to throw you on the spot here, but what would you say would be one of those interesting or phenomenal or bizarre stories that would kind of stick out to you that we can share to get things started here?
Oh, wow. Really quickly, one of the most bizarre ones, I had a woman who was selling her house. I was purchasing the house from her, and she called me from a blocked caller ID and attempted to disguise her voice and be her daughter and say, oh, my mom's not in her right mind. She can't sell you the house, this whole bit. And I kept, calling the woman's name saying, hey, I know it's you. So I let her finish her whole spill. I called her back and I said, hey, Mrs. So-and-so, look, I get it. If you don't want to do business, if you don't feel comfortable, we don't have to. And she's like, oh, no, that wasn't me. It was my daughter. And long story short, she went on and sold the house. But I was like on my way out the door and I just put it on speaker and my family is looking like, what? So yeah, that was kind of odd to me.
Wow. The lengths that people will go to just to avoid confrontation, huh?
Yeah.
That is a good story. Thanks for sharing that. So I want to just kind of give you the floor. One thing that you and I were talking about before I pressed this record button was that you have a journey. Your journey, just like everyone else's, is one that is still being paved. But I mean, almost half of your life, you have been in real estate investing. You've been crushing it with Airbnb, developing, wholesaling, this whole shebang of so many different ways. And we're going to talk in that second episode really about Airbnb, because that's one of my favorite topics. And I feel like we're going to have a lot of fun with that. But can you just kind of bring people up to speed with your background and really what real estate investing has meant for you in your life?
Well, really, real estate investment has meant like freedom and flexibility. So 19 was a time when my parents are the ones who introduced me to real estate investing. I bought my first property here in Memphis at 19. That's where my father's from. So my parents supported me and assisted me in doing that. And this is really all I know. I've definitely tried other things. And just when my father got sick, so my mother needed to take care of him, me going through being married and unmarried and moving and children and just all of life circumstances, real estate has really been a support in that. I don't even know what my life would look like if I had a regular 9 to 5 job and these things. So people who work a 9 to 5 job, my hat is off to you, managing life and then still showing up in that consistent way. Real estate has been exciting. Residential real estate is like the thing that I enjoy. Like I was telling you, I've probably done it all from being an agent to mortgages to flipping rental properties, of course, Airbnb, and now development. So
Wow. So agent flipping, wholesale development, what's kind of, I guess, what's been your favorite part of it? Has there been a favorite part, or it sounds like you like to switch things up a lot. Do you just like the variety?
I do. I think I don't know. People say like it's the Gemini in me. I do get bored easily, but I think the my favorite thing, which really had me say I wanted to get into developing, was at 21. This is shout out to this woman named Yuan Zhang in Seattle, Washington. That's where I'm from, and she gave me a big opportunity, and that was to be a project manager of condo conversions. So we essentially would acquire the property, release the tenants, remodel the properties, and then get them leased up as condos and setting up associations and all of those things. So I was responsible to work within budget. So I'm like 21, doing a couple $1 million budgets, and that was like a big deal to me. I was excited about that. And I didn't have to go and sit in at a desk. And I was like, oh yeah, this is what I want to do. Like the
Wow.
construction, I just enjoyed it. Probably
So
my favorite thing ever.
let's stick there for a second, because you said you take over these properties as the project manager, and then you pretty much evict the tenants, is what it sounds like, and then turn it into condos. Are these apartments before, or what are they when you
We
take
were
them over?
apartments before, and we did this in the greater Seattle area. So some people's leases would be up, some people would be on a month-to-month lease, and some properties would be vacant. So that whole process, I'm just thinking of different ones. Like you could go in and look up the Curie Road condominiums was probably one of my favorites. It was not far from a prison. And so
Wow.
my mother was like, "Oh my Lord, you can't be out there working." And at that age, I was like gung ho. So I had a pistol. I would take it. I'm little, but none of those things ever were an issue. You have tenants or different people who would be upset, but it was fun.
Hey, Fearless Flipping community, let's hear from one of our sponsors right now. Have you thought about becoming a real estate investor, but you have no money, or maybe you just don't feel like you have the right guidance, the right system, or maybe the right plan? Well, the Phenom Investor Blueprint course is your answer, developed by seven-figure earner Matt Garabedian and a good friend of mine. Matt uses his 10-plus years of real estate investing knowledge to teach you how to get involved with real estate investing without spending a dime. Matt's wholesaling techniques will work for any market at any time. So if you want to make 6 figures, 7 figures, or more, yeah, that's right, it's possible. It's time to invest in yourself. Check out the Phenom Investor Blueprint at fearlessflipping.com/phenom. Again, that's fearlessflipping.com/phenom. This is your first step to financial freedom. fearlessflipping.com/phenom.
So Tashiona, I got to ask, as a 21-year-old, you're dealing with millions of dollars in these projects. Was that scary at all for you?
At that time, no. I think I have more fear now about things. I was 21, so I didn't really have a whole lot to lose. I didn't have a family dependent on me. That was just what I wanted to do. I had the opportunity, and I had a great mentor. So, she was some sort of scientist by trade. And so she was very good with numbers and money. So she walked me through that process, how to look at a bid, how to accept. So I just had all the confidence in the world. Like anybody who knew me then, obviously you're not the same at 34, but I say from like 19 to 25, that was like my sweet spot in life. Like you couldn't tell me I couldn't do anything. So it was just no big deal. Yeah.
It's interesting how as soon as you got to take care of another human being, some of the fear creeps up. So, well, I want to stay on something before we get into the whole family part of it too, because that in itself I think is really interesting to hear. But I really relate to what you just said there, which was you had a mentor, you had someone that was there to help you along the way. And even though it was a large amount of money, because you had someone that entire way, that's what really drove you. And that's part of why I started this podcast with Fearless Flipping. And the reason, I've been told by some people, call it courageous flipping, because there's no such thing as not having fear, which, yeah, but there's no alliteration in that. So what's the fun in that?
Right. I love alliteration.
but here's the deal. Like, when I realized how much support there is in this industry from people that want to see you successful, whether they're tied to your profits or not, that's what got me excited, is that you don't need to know all this on your own. You don't need to go read a ton of books and then hope you're doing the right thing. You can make your mistakes along the way, but they're not going to last very long because you've got that mentor by your side. So it sounds like that was kind of what you were experiencing too, right?
It is indeed what I was experiencing.
That's great. So now, at the point where you're at today, I know you've gone through, you've done a lot of different things, from this project management stuff, from flipping, from all this. You're trying to figure out what the next step is really for your business. But a lot of that reason is because you just talked about it. You've got some fear because you've got these two little ones. You got a 5-year-old and 7-year-old that you got to make decisions for, and not just yourself. How is that impacting your business?
Oh, well, at first, so my children are the product of a previous marriage. So I'm not married anymore. And so at first there was some frustration there and fear behind, like, oh, I should probably just maybe get a 9 to 5 because the children are dependent on me and consistency. And then I don't know, this light bulb, and I think it just, a lot of it came through like prayer, like, okay, what do I need to do? Is I incorporated my children in my business. So at the time, really, I was concentrating on wholesaling at that time. So it was my son. I'd have bandit signs out. Obviously we're doing something different now, but at the time it was bandit signs, and he'd be scribbling. And I would take them in the car with me. And sometimes I took them on appointments, and I tease them. I say, I think maybe that may be the reason why I got some deals locked up, because I was just straight with people. Like, this is what's going on. This is what I'm dealing with. And it's important that I'm present with my children. So now it's anything, like, it's just like, utilize, not use, but just utilize whatever you have to work with to go after the result that you want. That's something I have to keep reminding myself of.
And that's awesome. You know what I just love about what you shared there, though, is I can't tell you how many people would have used their kids as their excuse, not as their purpose. And I can tell that you use your kids as your purpose. You knew that real estate was the answer for you, and you got a little bit of fear from, hey, now I've got kids to worry about. Do I go get a 9 to 5? And instead you said, no, you went back to your roots. You went back to the reason that you were doing this. You said, I need to make my kids part of this, not part of the reason that I quit. And I'm giving you a little bit of a golf clap over here, because I just think that's awesome that you would do that. So, I mean, for people out there right now, I guess, just speaking to people out there right now that maybe have been held back from taking that next step because they're so comfortable with a 9 to 5 job. Can you just speak to those people for a second and share, what it was that you needed to get over in order to take that leap to stay in real estate, and what it's meant for you and your life with your kids?
Well, I think the biggest thing was, like, when, like, if not now, when. So I will say that very early on, I knew that a 9 to 5 wasn't for me. So I was a bit of a risk taker. But like you said, now with these responsibilities, even still, a big thing was not wanting somebody to tell me, like, when I could go and see my children. They have like performances and field trips and those types of things. So it really was just about creating a plan, right? I knew it was important for my children to be stable with going from mom and dad being married to not married. So I didn't want to just change everything that they knew. So I had to come up with a plan. How do I get to be present for them mentally, emotionally? How do I take care of responsibilities? And so that's the main thing. And I really feel like, and at the time when this happened, I didn't have a 9 to 5 job. So I would encourage people, if you do have a 9 to 5 job, like that is really a way to pay for whatever you want to do entrepreneurial in real estate. Like you really have your own seed money in your job. It may mean that you don't, drink Starbucks. It may mean not going out. It may mean those things. But it's really like, how bad do you want it? It all sounds cliche, but it's so real. And like you talked about having a mentor, that is really important, because even in the conversations that I've had, even just to hear you say some of those things, because it's not me, to hear you say some of those things are an encouragement to me. And I think the benefit of someone, if you were to mentor them, is you're doing it. You're not over there telling, like, you're in the trenches. And I always have respect for people who are like that. And any of my mentors that I've had, they've always been mentors who were doing it, not sitting over there, not a paper mentor. And you hit on that. So
Yeah.
I appreciate you, because you definitely helped me bring clarity for me to say, look, these next 90 days, I'm gonna figure out what I
There
want
you
to
go.
do.
Good. Well, hey, we're professionals helping professionals, right?
For
So,
sure.
so I've got 3 questions, and I just want a yes or a no. Don't go into an explanation, just a yes or no. When you were faced with that decision, we're going back to, do I go get a 9 to 5 or do I stay in real estate? When you were faced with that decision, when you made the decision to stay in real estate, was that comfortable?
No.
Was it convenient?
Nah.
And if you had made the decision to go back to the 9 to 5, would you have felt complacent?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Or yes.
Yeah. Hey, yes, absolutely. I'll take them both. The reason I asked those 3 specific questions, I'm a person of faith. I believe that people are, we have conversations throughout the day. We meet people at certain times in our life for certain reasons. And just this last Sunday at church, it was exactly that. That was the 3 things that held us back from accomplishing our goals: was complacency, convenience, and comfort. And so I just need everyone to see right now, whether you're a person of faith or not, that Tashiona looked at convenience in the face and said no, looked at comfort in the face and said no, and looked at complacency in the face and said no, and said, I am going to go the route that is going to be best for my family, no matter how I feel or how much I fear this. And so this really brings me into really what you and I were kind of discussing, which is mindset. Your mindset is what has helped you be so successful, no matter what part of real estate investing that you're in. So how do you keep that strong mindset, or what are some tricks that you can share with our audience to help them conquer some fear?
The main thing is who I talk to, who I'm around. So it's important to be with people who are where I want to go, like people who are going to like love on me, but they're also going to like call me out on my stuff. And, like I talk about Tom, I love Tom and Cody. And Tom constantly tells me, like, you're a big girl, you got this, you're a strong woman. And I tease, when he says that, and it's true. And I do a lot of reading, probably not as much as I should, and even what I listen to. There's a song me and my kids sing, "Oh, be careful, little eyes, what you see, what you hear, what you do." But that's important for adults. So for me, it's really big that I'm listening to what it is that's going to fuel my dreams, the results I want to create. So
That's
I had
awesome.
to cut out reality TV, but
What? You had to cut out reality TV? No, no, Real Housewives or anything like that for you anymore?
nope. So I get one binge, and right now Power is on, so that's that's my guilty pleasure.
Oh gosh. Well, I'm guilty of binging Netflix too, but I've never been a reality person. But it, I I think what you said there, though, surrounding yourself with good people. There's a lot of studies that go out. I'm sure you've heard them. Like, hey, you share your goals. What is it like? You think about your goals, you write them down,
Mhm.
you share them. Like every single step gets you closer to actually accomplishing them. But then there's that opposite effect too. If you share your goals like with the wrong person, how they can, kind of cut you down and say there's no way you can get to those goals, or the exact opposite, and you share that with just an acquaintance and say, yeah, way to go, you can do it. And that almost gives you that sense of like, oh, I've accomplished it. So it's that finding that medium with people like you mentioned that are around you, where it's, hey, good for you for mentioning these goals, but what are you going to do to get to them? Is that the kind of relationship that you're looking for with the people that make you better, elevate you?
Absolutely. Like I say it all the time. I don't want yes people around me,
Mm,
because I know I can be stubborn, and then I can be like whatever. So I need people who are going to have that balance to say, okay, I got it, and this is what you get to do. And so even the language that I use has a lot to do with the people I'm around. I get to be a mom. I get to be an entrepreneur. I don't have to do it.
mm.
I get to do it. So all of that matters. Um, and trust me, and I still struggle with being uncomfortable, right now, today. So
That's good. It's crazy how our language really affects our attitude. Even the word that you hear a lot, like in sales, rather than using the word but, use the word and. It just changes that mindset. So that had to be tough for you to learn, though. Am I right?
oh, it is. It's a challenge now. And so the beauty of bringing the children to certain things and having certain conversations is they'll remind me, like, hold on, we don't say that in our family. We don't utilize that. And it makes you think. It can be funny, but just changing your state. Like, when sometimes I feel like I don't want to do anything, I have friends who'll be like, I'm not getting off the phone with you until you get up and move. All of those things help, because I believe that depression and all these things are real, they exist, and I believe that there's a solution to them. And
Mm.
so for me, just my faith for sure, okay, has really helped me. And then in addition to that, the actions that I've taken behind that.
That's
That's
great.
really
So
what matters. Yeah.
I'm just getting this, you and I have only talked once before, and it was mainly about Airbnb. So now really getting to know your story, I can just see how all of this is getting intertwined. Not just, it's no surprise why you're successful, but it's also no surprise that, all these things going with your mindset are now being transferred over to your kids. And for sure, it sounds like, with them tagging along with you, they don't really have a choice but to adopt what you're doing. So, I guess, just from a mom's standpoint, and maybe now speaking to the parents out there, how do you um, really bring in not just your kids into your business, but into your mindset? How are you really helping them to, I mean, they're only 5 and 7 years old, right? How much can
Right.
you actually teach them at this young of an age, but how much do you really pay attention to that stuff from either the business or the personal standpoint of what you're transferring over to them?
To me, it's imperative. I've actually had my kids on with me on one of these with what is his name, Tony the closer, and they talked a little bit about what they do with me. So for me, everything I say is a conversation, and so I talk to my children about almost everything. So me and my son the other day, we had a conversation about mommy not liking how my time is so restricted as I rebuild, but it's for a purpose. So I don't look at it, and sometimes I have friends, and their grandmother, of course, reminds me that they are only 5 and 7, but I don't look at it like they're just 5 and 7, because I never know what is going to be said to them from myself or an environment that I put them in professionally or personally that's gonna like ignite this spark in them that they'll take on and utilize it to become contributors to the world, to people, their community. So I just look at it like I have conversations with them like you and I have conversations with. And sometimes my daughter will be like, I don't even know what you're talking about. And sometimes they'll say they get it. So I don't take anything for granted in my communication with them and what I expose them to.
That's so cool. So not to transition so quickly here, but part of what we're going to be talking about in the second episode is creating systems, especially for Airbnb. So I would be remiss if we don't at least talk about the power of Airbnb here in this episode. For a lot of my listeners, they know that this is something that I'm very passionate about. I was doing Airbnb from 2014 to 2018 as just a house hacking system, just a room out of my house. And then it was middle of 2018 when this light bulb went off, where I was like, why am I not doing the entire house? And now a year later, it's my full-time income with just 4 Airbnb listings, which, I mean, that's how powerful it has been for me. Yeah. And, I don't have 2 kids. I'm a single guy, so I don't have as much, but my goal there is to eventually be at 20, 30, 40 Airbnbs. And you had your hands on 21 different Airbnbs.
Yes.
You know what you're doing. So I just want to hear from you. What has Airbnb been for you in your life?
Airbnb is excitement to me, because like I told you, I get bored easily. So it allows me to have flexibility of where I'm staying, amenities. It's fun for me. And obviously you make money doing it, right? And the beauty of that is with a long-term rental, every month I'm gonna cash flow $375. Well, if you market that property right, you get all your numbers are right. There's like really, I'm trying to think, like probably one of the best months that I've had on a single unit probably was about $2,800, like in profit.
In one property.
Yes, and that's in the Atlanta market. I love it. So I'm sure there's other markets, but I like brag on that market a lot. And I'm just like, I mean, who would have, like, I don't even know. Like, shout out to people who created Airbnb because it's dope.
Absolutely. Well, and that's the thing is, I'm always looking at how can I get to my goals faster. And, when I was hearing about people bragging about $200, $300, $400 of passive income every month, I'm thinking to myself, if I want to get to $40,000 or $50,000 a month, that's going to take a long time. And then, with Airbnb, you just mentioned $2,800 in one property. That was your max. What's the average that you're seeing in your properties, or at least an estimate of the average?
Well, generally, like my model sticks for a 1-bedroom with a sleeper. So I just gave y'all a nugget right there. So that sleeps 4. And in the Atlanta market, once you pay everybody, you're probably looking at maybe 800, sometimes 12. So somewhere between $800 and $1,200, which is, I don't know if it's low. I don't know if it's high. But you start
better than $375.
Consistently. So Atlanta does really well. Memphis did too. Memphis was somewhere between like $700 and $900.
That's great.
Yes.
Hey, like I said, a lot better than 375. So, when you say 1-bedroom, 1-bath, are you owning these properties or are you doing rental arbitrage?
So I do both. Well, I've done both. But the main thing now is being able to go into spaces as a corporate rental company. And so the 1-bedroom model just really works. So it's a lot larger than a hotel, has more conveniences, but from a cost perspective, it allows you to really pull in some good profit, not just, obviously the revenue, but good profit. So that's why we stick with that.
So for our audience there, can you talk for a second of what you mean by a corporate rental?
So a corporate rental, essentially, I guess the way I would say it is, I go into these properties and I say, hey, we have people who are professionals who come in with X company and they'll be staying there. So you pitch it as a professional service versus just leisure travelers who come in like from a hotel or couch crashers. And so those conversations go a bit differently because it's something from the property management company, if you are doing rentals, and you can certainly do it with property owners too, but from a property management company, it gives them a little more security that you've vetted these travelers, these guests. They're not, party throwers. So that's what I mean, I guess, when I say a corporate rental, more
Sure.
professional traveler.
So there's some people on here that aren't familiar with what rental arbitrage is. So I'm going to just explain to them. So I understand what you're saying, but I need to make sure they understand too. So what Tashiona is doing here is she has a system where she's created these relationships with corporate companies, whether it's travel nurses, construction workers, medical professionals, the whole 9 yards. Now she's going to these places. Maybe it's an apartment, maybe it's a condo, maybe it's a landlord who owns a single family home and says, hey, I run a professional vacation rental, medium term type of relationship with these companies, they're looking for me to put their nurses, their construction workers in places for 3 to 6 months. I would like to do that with your place. And here's why you would be comfortable with working with me, because I have this track record, yada, yada, yada. So essentially, Tashiona, in layman's term, is taking over the rent or the mortgage. She's not owning the real estate. That's what rental arbitrage is. Now, on the other side of this, I'm curious, how are you developing these relationships with the corporations? So the nurses or the construction workers, or actually share with us who you are really working with and how did you develop those relationships?
So now the big thing was for me to go into the property management side of it. And so when you talk about nurses, that's not something we've done a whole lot of. And I think I was telling you in California, that's a big deal. But the thing is to go in really and have references on both sides. So when you have a traveler, if they know that they can come in after being in meetings or being on the road, and we can show them what our portfolio looks like. More so with travelers, it's word of mouth, references through that way. With the corporate companies, we go with the property management. With them, it's references from other apartment complexes, other units, other condos associations where we've been successful at, and say, hey, you can have a conversation with them. This is what you can expect. So me, if you can't tell, I'm a talker. So, I just didn't mind going, and sometimes, we would be in people's offices waiting 2 and 3 hours just to have a conversation. And I tell people all the time, FaceTime, no pun intended, is probably one of the best ways to get your foot in the door, because people are always calling now. People are always trying to find a way. And don't get me wrong, there's a time for that, to do something with the least amount of effort, and to automate things. But when you are just getting started in something, you want to go in and build the relationship. So references has been a big thing, and word of mouth, and just getting out, talking to people, telling them what we do.
Do you find that the profits are similar when it comes to just doing a traditional Airbnb, where you might have a turnover every 3 to 4 days, versus these corporate rentals that can last, as much as 3 to 6 months?
So it kind of goes back to what we talked about, long-term rentals. So corporate rentals, because especially when you contract with a company to say people that come in for training are going to be there, you're securing a price for them, right? So it's obviously going to be more than a long-term traditional lease, but it's not as much as if you're doing the 2 to 3 days. And the reason why I say that, we just had, Labor Day weekend, for example, in Atlanta. And a few of our properties were available for that. And we had people come in for Dragon Con. No joke. Someone stayed for 2 days, $1,260. And the reason why I say this is because that number sticks out. And I was looking at my Airbnb thing just to see, right? So you can't necessarily spike prices like that once you're in a contract and an agreement with a company on either side, because they're relying, on you to be available and to lock in at that price. So something that is new, I guess I'll give this away, is now putting peak times in there to say, okay, we'll lock in this price. However, we have the option of saying you can either pay this price, or we get to put you in a unit that's comparable, and you may be also putting them in a hotel, which kind of goes right back. But the goal is, and like I said, with me figuring things out, is to always have a place for them to go, and then being guests. And I think that's why it would be cool to connect with other Airbnb hosts, because then you can have kind of reciprocal agreements, kind of like airlines do when they can't fit you on their aircraft.
Awesome. Hey, you have just added so much value, and we are going to go into more about your systems here in the second episode later on this week, with Airbnb and these corporate rentals as well. But quick question. I do want to help everyone get in contact with you here in a second, but are you on Facebook as well?
I am on Facebook.
So we're going to have to add you to our Airbnb Masterminds Facebook group, because the value that you're adding, I just know that you're going to find people too that are going to help bring you more value too. I've just had a guy that got added to our group recently that has 28 Airbnbs currently, and he used to be a principal at a high school. So there's just people all over the US that are joining this group that have great value to add. So I want to encourage everyone to go to Facebook and look up Airbnb Masterminds, or if you just go straight to our Facebook group on on Facebook, which is just facebook.com/fearless flipping. You can also find the Facebook group there. But Tashiona, how can people get in contact with you to ask more questions or to connect with what you're doing?
Well, I'm on Facebook as Tashiona King Stout, Tashiona, and then King King -Stout Stout. And I'm on Instagram as The Legacy Mama, TheLegacymomma.
A very fitting name for you after we've just discussed a lot about your family. So Tashiona, thank you so much for providing value and helping our audience to conquer real estate investing.
Thanks, Kyle.
You know the drill, fearlessflipping.com/king, King. And that is where you can find the show notes with Tashiona, recap everything she just shared there. An inspirational story, once again, about a woman that has really just found a way to be able to integrate this business and adjust it based on where she's at in life and bring her kids into the mix as well, teaching her kids entrepreneurial spirit. That's making a difference. You know, it doesn't matter if we're making a difference here by sharing this with tons of people on a podcast, or if you're a mother or a father who's just doing it with their kids. That's what life is all about, right? So make sure you check out those show notes again, fearlessflipping.com/king. And on the next episode, really excited about this, my first episode where I dive deep into Airbnb with an expert. You know, I talk about Airbnb all the time, especially on Facebook, on Instagram. If you're not following me there, make sure you are. And we've also got a Facebook group for Airbnb. It's Airbnb Masterminds. If you just Google on Facebook, Airbnb Masterminds, you will find our group. We're always looking to add value to people, but that video and that podcast is going to be on the next episode, where we are going to be talking about strategy and systems for Airbnb. If you haven't educated yourself on this, you're going to want to. I'm telling you guys, it is the way for financial freedom right now in this day and age for the real estate game. If you don't have money to get into real estate, you can go raise money, or you can look at something like Airbnb, which can be a great way to get started and not necessarily have to have money to get started. So you'll see that on the next episode. I don't want to give away too much, but make sure you go check that out, and you will conquer, whether it's real estate investing or real estate Airbnb investing. That's what we're helping you to conquer. We'll see you next time.